Say one thing for Joe Abercrombie. Say when he releases a new book, I'm going to talk about it. The Devils is the latest book by Joe Abercrombie, and I had a great time reading about it, and I want to talk to you about it. Of course, I don't necessarily want to do just a straight review because I feel like you're going to find 20 of the exact same review out there. So today I want to talk to you about a slight maybe issue, maybe non-issue I experienced while reading The Devils, and I want to see what you think about it. I haven't looked at any other reviews, but I'm guessing they're all pretty much going to say the same thing that I would say if I was just doing a straight review of this book. That the characters were really fun and really well realized. They're just like all of the other Joe Abercrombie characters. They're despicable, morally gray people, but they're really fun and relatable to read about. The dark humor is off the charts in this one. It's probably Joe Abercrombie's funniest book. You're probably going to have the most fun time reading this, and that the action is as grim and dark as ever, and it is just all around a really great time, a really entertaining read, just a really fun book all around. I would like to talk about the one thing that kind of made me struggle a little bit. It took me about 2 weeks to read this book. One, I did want to take my time with it because who knows when we're going to get a new book, probably in a year or two. So I kind of wanted to take my time with this one. But also there were a couple moments while reading the book that I definitely stalled out. And it took me, I wanted to read it all the way through, but it took me a couple of times to get the motivation to pick it back up again. We're going to get back to the classic pacing discussion. Pacing is such a weird thing to talk about because pacing is so subjective. What is paced well for one person might be paced poorly for another person. But what's interesting about The Devil's pacing is even though I struggled with it, I don't necessarily think the pacing was bad, but there were some, and I don't even want to call them issues, but let's just call them issues for the sake of this video, for the sake of the argument. There were some issues that did stall me a couple times while reading the book. And it's in the way that the plot itself is structured. So The Devils uses an episodic story structure. And what I mean by that is that there are a lot of basically little vignettes or little mini adventures that are kind of separate and a little standalone from each other, but are also tied together to form a whole. And these are all adventures that take place over the course of the plot, which is the Devils trying to escort a character from point A to point B. And throughout their journey, they get sidetracked or halted or slowed down before they can get to their destination. So I want to compare The Devils to another Joe Abercrombie book to hopefully illustrate my point here. So let's talk about Best Served Cold for a minute. Best Served Cold also uses an episodic story structure. In Best Served Cold, Monza and crew are trying to achieve revenge. And there are 7 people that Monza wants to get revenge on. And so the book is comprised of 7 episodes, we'll call them. 7 episodes of revenge that all come together to form the whole. And each of the different episodes has its own pros and cons, its own challenges and excitements, its own new characters that are brought in or characters that are brought out. It's a very similar plot structure to The Devils in the sense that it is comprised. It has that episodic plot structure. However, I never really had any issues with the pacing while reading Best Served Cold that I did with The Devils. And yet, I really like both of these books. So what was my issue with The Devils, and why did it work better in Best Served Cold? And what I found was the difference between the two is even though they have episodic plot structures, the story in Best Served Cold basically informs you up front at the beginning of the story exactly what kind of episodic plot structure you're going to have, in the sense that when the story starts, there are 7 people that Monza wants to get revenge on, and she is going to get revenge on all 7 of those people. And after the first or second little adventure, the first or second episode, you realize, okay, the structure of this book is going to be Monza and whoever's on her crew in this time going to a new location, finding the person she wants to get revenge on, and then we're going to see whatever it takes for them to accomplish that revenge. And then pretty soon after that revenge, that episode is going to end, and we're going to pick up in a new location for the next episode. You know exactly how much progress has to be made, exactly what that structure is gonna look like, and you know exactly as well how much to invest in each particular episode. Because at each episode, when you jump to a new location, we're not going to be in this location all that much, so I don't have to overtly invest or pay attention in all the little details of this place because we're probably about to move and go somewhere else. And so knowing exactly how many episodes there are going to be and what that structure is going to be ahead of time allows you to be able to just fall into that rhythm and that pace. In The Devils, the difference is you do not know how many episodes are going to comprise The Devils. There are about, I think, 4 or 5 episodes, as I would call them, in The Devils. And the problem that I noticed with The Devils is anytime there was an episode switch or an episode transition, because I didn't know how many of those were going to be, I didn't know how much I needed to invest in any particular episode. And it took me a while to realize that The Devils was going to be an episodic story to begin with. I think after like the third time, I realized, oh, this is going to be an episodic thing where we're going on different little adventures. What's interesting is the effect that it has on at least on my brain, maybe on yours, I don't know, is that I felt like even though I realized what was happening and I realized what the structure of the book was, I still felt like the story was stalling because I didn't know basically the overall structure, right? I didn't know there's going to be 5 episodes. When the crew is trying to get on a boat and okay, to advance the plot, to advance the story, they have to get on the boat. But to get on the boat, they have to go grab a plot coupon for another character so they can buy passage on the boat. Once the plot was stalled, I still had, several chapters worth of time thinking, oh, we're wasting time. Like that House of Illusions section is a really good section to talk about because like we know that to advance the plot we have to go here, but before we can come here, we have to turn in the plot coupon to be able to advance. So let's spend about 15 chapters going to get the plot coupon. And it feels like we're wasting time. Even though intellectually I understood the plot doesn't matter. Even though intellectually I understood I just want to, see what these characters are like on this adventure. I want to see what little groups or pairs are going to be formed here. Even though all of that is going on intellectually, emotionally, I feel like, I'm wasting time here. Like we're not getting anything done. We're just wasting 15 to 20 chapters on, and I hate when people use this word, on a side quest. And that is where I started to stall a little bit. Now, after the third or fourth time this happened, I realized, oh, okay, The Devils is just an episodic adventure. Even when I knew that, right, it's still hard because you're trying to figure out how much should I invest in these side characters that we're meeting? Are they going to be in the story for a couple chapters or 10 chapters? How long is this episode going to be? And so it's always like, it's a little disorienting, right? When you're getting invested in one episode and you're like, okay, all right, I'm finally getting back into it. I'm enjoying this episode. I'm enjoying this adventure. I'm enjoying these character dynamics. I'm enjoying these villains. And then boom, that episode ends and we quickly transition into a completely new episode. And you're like, okay, it's like restarting the book almost, right? It's like you have to reorient yourself to, okay, now this is what our goal is. And now this is what the character dynamics are. And this is what the groups are. Okay, all right, now it's been 5 chapters. All right, I'm getting it. Okay, these guys are all split up and they're in a civil war ravaged country. Okay, I'm getting into this episode. All right, this is really fun. Oh, that episode ended and now we're back to another episode. Even though I knew this is what was happening, because I didn't know how many episodes and what the overall plot structure was up front, I felt like I was being disoriented at multiple times and like investing in a storyline and then, oh, all right, now we're starting a new episode, a new storyline. And so it was constantly like the story was stopping and starting. And I was still enjoying the book regardless, but I was still stalling a little bit at multiple points because I was like, I have to get back into this new episode. I wanted to put this video out here talking about this kind of plot structure and whether or not this is a me problem, whether or not this is a book problem, honestly, whether or not this is a problem at all. Because to be honest, obviously when I reread this book, that's not going to be a problem anymore because I'm going to know, okay, there's 5 episodes and I know how much and how important each one is and how much I should invest in each of those different little plot lines. Whereas with Best Served Cold, it kind of got that out of the way on the first read through because you just know there's going to be 7 episodes. I was noticing how it was affecting my reading experience while still actively enjoying what I was reading, if that makes sense. So it was these weird warring emotions within me. And it was making me struggle a little bit. That being said, I obviously kept reading because the characters are great. So I'm not really sure why. I think maybe it was just a first read through issue. I don't know. But I don't know if I've seen anybody talk about this at all in any like Goodreads reviews or anything I've read. And this is the one thing that kept me from saying that The Devils was a perfect book, despite really enjoying it. And, I don't even know if there's a solution, right? Should every book be like Best Served Cold and tell you what, the overall plot is going to be? I don't think so, right? Because you obviously want to keep the readers guessing. But it was just an interesting point that I've noticed. Just this issue of pacing and plot structure is really fascinating to me. I just wonder what other people's thoughts on it are because I can be actively loving and enjoying a book and still be having problems with its structure and its pacing, even though I couldn't necessarily say the pacing is bad. So I don't know. This is like a really rambly video, basically just to say that The Devils is really great, but I noticed this one issue I had with it on my first read through. Besides that though, obviously, I guess I'll get the review out of the way. I probably feel the same way that everyone feels, that the characters are great, that the action is great, that the dark humor is great. In terms of all that stuff, The Devils is as good as any other Joe Abercrombie book, maybe even the best. Probably I like this one so much just because it was so funny. And when you can just be funny, you can just let loose and have a good time. And so the characters are just genuinely really funny to read. And So that was great. So there's your 30 seconds of review and 10 minutes of rambling about plot structure.